What would Mitch McConnell do?
Well, Mitch McConnell would use all the power at his disposal to press forward and to achieve his strategic political goals, to achieve his agenda. And I think the Democrats have to face up to the intransigence of the Republican majority in this way and separate out the issues to two categories. And there are two issues that are moral issues. The debt ceiling is a moral issue, and voting rights is a moral issue. And the filibuster should not stand above the outcome to those two moral issues. Now, the question of the debt ceiling, what we're talking about, is a default on the full faith and credit of the United States of America. So this is not a debate around whether Joe Biden and the Democratic Congress wants to spend too much money. And there are a lot of people who look at that amount of money and say that that amount worries them. I would be one of those people. That's not what this debate is about. What this debate is about is whether the $8 trillion of spending, the money that was already spent, gone, poof, spent it on the national credit card, whether we should make the debt payments on that spending. And if we don't make the payments on that spending, we risk many, many things to the American economy, and we risk harm to tens and tens and tens of millions of American families. And the reason for that is Mitch McConnell and the Republicans want to create chaos, and then they will run on turning that chaos into order, into restoring what was not broken before they broke it. It's extremely, extremely cynical. And the other issue is the voting rights issue, which in 2021, is it appropriate to peel back a Senate rule that is all that is stopping legislation from moving forward that would protect the idea at long last that voting is for everybody in the country? So that's what Mitch McConnell would do. He would win. But that's not what the Democrats have done. As 9 months on, we've seen a Republican Party grow more extreme, more intransigent, more hostile, more dangerous, but not yet confronted by the side that believes in decency, humanism, pluralism, and democracy.
Yeah,
Well, Mitch McConnell is playing a game of brinksmanship. At the end of the day, the dollar, the United States dollar, is the reserve currency of the world. It won't be for so much longer if we were to, for the first time, to default on the full faith and credit of the United States. It's never been contemplated before. So this moment that we're in right now is a soft default of sorts, because something that is unthinkable is actually being contemplated, right? We are at the edge of the cliff, and that's where Mitch McConnell and this brand of nihilism has brought us. So now what does that require? It requires somebody, could be the president, could be Chuck Schumer, it requires somebody from the only responsible governing party to walk in and say, hey, Mitch, someone's going to blink, and it's not going to be me. It's going to be you here on this. And at the end of the day, if we have to break the filibuster, we break the filibuster to protect the economy. The actual dollar payments to our veterans, to our senior citizens, we will have a deep, fast, profound economic crisis. According to every economist, it will be like taking out a sidearm and firing a bullet into your own leg for the purposes of I don't know what. But certainly it's the case that downrange from that act of political vandalism, you'll have tens of millions of Americans hurt. And something like this does not happen in a serious country. It happens in a country that's rotting, right? That politics are rotting. That's rotten at a level of governance. We don't and have not had in 250 years of history any previous leaders who've ever even walked up close to this line. That's how serious this is. That's how unprecedented this is. And that's how deep the malignancy the spirit of partisanship against any concept of the public good has gotten in Mitch McConnell's Washington, D.C. Though he is the minority leader, culturally, he rules the zeitgeist of the city, much to the misfortune of the United States of America.
And much to the misfortune, if this comes to pass, of active duty troops, Luke. Steve, take me through what your advice would be to Democratic leaders today.
Use the power you have immediately today. End the standoff over the debt ceiling and signal that within 30 days, if there's no agreement on a consensus around protecting voting rights in the country from the hundreds of pieces of malice legislation that have been filed in the states, that you're going to strike the filibuster to move forward on that also. There is no snapback to the Republican Party. It's gone. It's dead. It's gone forever. We are living in the fifth year, the first year of the Biden presidency, 3 years shy of the next presidential election, a year out from the midterm election. Republican Party is more extreme, more radical than it was on the date of the insurrection. It's more hardened. It's more hardened in its faith to delusions. We have a real-life autocratic movement in this country that is teeming with intimations of violence, that is an open coalition with extremist groups, fascist groups, militia groups, heavily armed groups that routinely show out to exercise their First Amendment rights with a long gun, a semi-automatic rifle, and all the implications of that in a free and democratic society. We have a serious problem in this country, and we have a political party that has become wholly nihilistic in its application of power, its obstruction. There are legitimate debates about spending in a range of issues between the parties, but a purposeful default on the debt, the purposeful weakening of the country, the signal that it sends to our adversaries and to our allies. There are no comparable acts of public irresponsibility in the history of the country, but let's make it accessible for everybody and just say in the post-World War II era. We're at a grave moment in our politics, and the big question on the ballot for the majority in the country is going to be around whether this Biden coalition can hold together and that there can be any type of forward progress in governance in the country, and to be able to hold back this autocratic movement from taking power, because clearly it has made its ill will towards democracy as clear as day. Can't be any clearer about its communication around those issues.
Luke, where do you put the odds of the Democrats doing what Steve just suggested?